This is the Rings of Power podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about the Rings of Power, Episode 4, The Great Wave.
Is our valor confined to the graves of our slumbering fathers? Or is it here, amongst us even now, waiting to burst forth as the rising sun?
Welcome back, fellow Ringers. Yes, this is TV Podcast Industries, and it is episode 4 of The Rings of Power, and our discussion about the Great Wave. I am one of your hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek, back from holidays, all rested and slightly tanned. 3 days in the sun.
Yes.
That'll do it for us.
Certainly will. I'm glad we didn't have a great wave whilst we were by the beach in Croatia.
Absolutely.
To be honest.
Yeah, that would have been devastating.
Absolutely. Really would have spoilt the holiday, I guess.
just a bit. But we wouldn't be here to talk about it if it was the kind of wave that we see in episode 4 of Rings of Power.
No, most definitely not. But fellow Ringers, if you're joining us again, or if it's your first time finding the podcast, please remember to subscribe to the podcast. You can also find any good or evil podcast catcher of your choice over on our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast. Send in any feedback, theories, comments, or observations on the Rings of Power to our email at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com.
Absolutely, yeah. We've said before, we're not the Tolkien scholars here, so if we get anything wrong, or if anything you wanted to add to your thoughts of Rings of Power, we'd love to hear from you. And we have some good bits of feedback coming in for episode 4 and episode 5, the episodes that were out while we were away.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's get it on with our spoiler-filled chat on episode 4. Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Well, this show is based on The Lord of the Rings and the Appendices by J.R.R. Tolkien. The showrunners for the show are J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. Episode 4 was directed by Wayne Shi-Yip, who directed episode 3 and episode 5 as well. Interestingly, J.A. Bayona directed the first 2 episodes of the series. And this episode, The Great Wave, is about a tsunami coming in and destroying a city, which was one of J.A. Bayona's major movies.
Yes, that
The
is
Impossible
true. Yes,
was
with Tom Holland.
Yes, that was his movie. So I'm quite surprised that J.R.R. Bayona didn't want to do the episode about the massive wave coming in to take out Númenor.
Yeah, interesting. Although it is mainly in kind of dream form, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, but it's just because he had that previous knowledge, I was surprised to not see him as the director of the episode.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's
amazing.
Interesting. Yeah,
it is amazing. But this episode was written by Stephany Folsom and showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. Stephany Folsom wrote Toy Story 4, interestingly,
wow. Okay.
And was also one of the writers on Thor Ragnarok, one of the uncredited writers. I believe there's about 12 writers on that movie, to be honest. And she was the writer and original showrunner of Paper Girls on Prime Video as well.
Good stuff, yes.
Well, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for episode 4 of The Rings of Power, The Great Wave?
Sure. Queen Regent Míriel has a vivid dream of the destruction of Númenor by the Great Wave. With tensions in the city rising, the dream and its portents shape Queen Miriel's dealings with Galadriel and her decision to send her back to Middle-earth and away from Númenor. Placed in prison, Galadriel's neighbour, Halbrand, offers her some advice to slow down, understand her captors, and be less confrontational with the Queen. As the Chancellor Pharazon comes to collect Galadriel for departure, she escapes to the tower to seek an audience with the true King of Numenor, Miriel's father. But the Queen is already there and takes the opportunity to show Galadriel the vision of Númenor's destruction in Appendices. Galadriel convinces Míriel to join the fight against the orcs in the Southlands. As preparations begin for war, Isildur pledges himself to the effort. Meanwhile, in the Southlands, Arondir meets J.R.R, who appears to be a scarred elf from the Elder Days. Adar releases Arondir, giving him a message to be passed on to the humans who have taken refuge in the old elven watchtower. They have the opportunity to surrender and swear fealty to Adar. But with food running out, Theo and Rowan go scavenging back at their village, Tyriad. As Rowan is scared off by the orcs, they learn that Theo holds the dark sword hilt they seek. As Theo tries to escape from the orcs, he is helped by Arondir and his mother Bronwyn. Meanwhile, in Khazad-dûm, the dwarves have found Mithril and keep it a secret, but Elrond discovers the mine and swears an oath to Prince Durin to keep his secret. Heading back to Lindon with Elrond, King Durin III informs his son to discover what the elves of Lindon are up to. Yes.
Secrets and lies.
It is. Yes. Indeed, it is. All that suspicion definitely comes from somewhere, shall we say, between dwarves, elves, humans, you name it.
Absolutely.
It's whether it's small man syndrome for the dwarves or whether it's the superiority complex that the elves give off that affect the humans, who knows? But certainly it seems that there is justification to be suspicious, certainly in these higher circles that are that we're dealing with here in the Rings of Power.
I think that's kind of the story behind all of Middle-earth, really. Nobody trusts anybody else. Everybody has a problem with everybody else. You know, the Númenóreans don't like the elves. The dwarves don't trust the elves. The humans have their problems, obviously, with the orcs and Adar and the Southlands. So there is all this untrustworthy stuff. And of course, the elves, who were looking out over the humans in the Southlands, they are untrustworthy because they were policing the whole society. So everybody has their problem with everybody else in this
It really
region.
does, yeah.
And then hopefully they can form a fellowship and overcome those existing issues so they can fight against the real evil. Is kind of the way you'd see it, right?
Exactly. But let's discuss these tales of Middle-earth for episode 4, The Great Wave. Let's move on to our tale number 1, Arondir and Adar. What do you think about this?
This was big because obviously last episode ended with this moment where Arondir was pulled back into the orcs and pulled back in by the orcs and brought to meet Adar. We kind of said he looked vaguely human, possibly elvish, and we get a proper confrontation between Arondir and Adar, a moment where they talk or have some kind of discussion. Arondir throws a bit of doubt on what type of species Adar is, because Arondir is an elf, has been around for 1,000 years, and hears that Adar visited his original hometown. Effectively, he knows where he's from, so potentially Adar is elvish. But there's something odd about him. Obviously, he's a much darker creature than we've seen the rest of the elves. He's leading the orcs. He's called their father. The translation of Adar is father. So he is definitely has a connection to the elves, but it's not clear exactly what he is. Arondir even calls that out. What are you? What exactly are you?
Yeah, and he doesn't really give a straight answer, but he's not wearing all the sun protective garments that the other orcs are. But then we haven't seen him out in the sun.
Yes.
Just yet. So yeah, this was really interesting. I mean, even just having sort of the tension of, Adar putting one of his orcs out of its misery, you know, sort of it's been injured, and effectively his medicine is a knife to the gut, and you see then Arondir sort of picking up a bit of sort of metal to use as a makeshift kind of dagger if he needs to. But I thought this kind of confrontation, you know, it was really good because Adar very much, it feels like he has the upper hand here. He's quite calm, collected, speaking about where Arondir was born and his thoughts and his memories of that place. You know, but then also in some ways almost trying to sort of appeal to Arondir's maybe intrigue and another side to Arondir where he says, you have been told many lies that run deep.
Yeah.
About, is it him, the orcs and so on. So really kind of, I mean, again, we don't get any answers to what those lies amount to.
Yeah,
but
he just says the whole world is filled with lies. It's built on lies, and effectively only gods can change the world. And he says, I'm not a god. Well, not yet, anyway.
Yes.
So he does seem to have a plan to change the world into his own image, effectively.
But I mean, ultimately, he actually releases Arondir to go back to the watchtower, to deliver a message to the men and women of the area, which is basically, that they may live if they release their lands to him and swear fealty to him. So,
yes,
kind of, interesting here, because I think, this ties in a bit to the other part of this tale, which is Theo and the hilt and returning to the village to get food. It connects in with Arondir arriving back to deliver that message from Adar. So we have the message here being delivered once Theo has managed to escape from their village. That the humans are running out of food. There's not enough rabbits or livestock in the countryside to hunt because the orcs are hunting them as well. And it's dangerous. But Theo and Rowan go back to their village to try and get supplies then from Waldreg's cellar. So that's the guy in the bar.
The guy has been constantly challenging Bronwyn because she seems to have been becoming more of a leader for them since she took the head of an orc and brought it to the bar to tell everybody to get out of the town and go to the watchtower. She seems to be kind of taking over a bit of the following, I guess, of the former people. And now what we did see in the watchtower is loads of other towns have come. It's not just their hometown that's there. It's loads of other towns have come together to try and protect themselves from the orcs. There does seem to be this kind of push to return the Southlanders, who traditionally, as we heard in the first episode, I think it was, traditionally had a connection and were followers of Morgoth. There seems to be this push that, return to the ways of your previous generations, follow Adar, join with the orcs and give up your lands to us, and then you'll be safe. I think safe probably means working for them, doesn't it?
I guess so.
It's
interesting. I'd love to actually get a better understanding or a clearer picture as to how the Southlanders were treated under Morgoth, because it seems that, blood oaths were given by the king at the time, Halbrand's descendants, to be, effectively fealty to him.
Yeah. The other way around, isn't it? He's a descendant, so what's the other way around? His ancestors.
His ancestors. So, I think, it'd be good to know how the men and women back in that great war with Morgoth, where they fought on his side, just how well they were treated, because, we get here later on. The big thing here that we see is Waldreg, who, Rowan and Theo go off to clear out his cellar, also knows that Theo has this hilt. And has actually probably known for a while. And you actually see that he is a follower of Sauron, is waiting for his return, and is telling Theo he must prepare himself as well and keep strong for what's to come. Yeah. So you have this this whole idea that, there's a huge number of people that are still loyal followers of Morgoth and his, his general Sauron, and are waiting for this return. Yeah. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Yeah. I really liked that idea that, because up till now, with most, with all of the villagers following Bronwyn, seemingly pretty scared about it as well. The orcs attacking most people or capturing a lot of people, that's justified as well. But sprinkled within this, there are people that are waiting the return.
Well, exactly. And remember...
of their king,
yeah, well, there you go, yeah. But remember, Waldreg is the person that was holding on to the hilt. The hilt that Theo found was underneath his property. Mm-hmm. So I guess he's keeping it as a former follower of Morgoth, or maybe his people were followers of Morgoth. And he was keeping it in case the king did return, as you say, in case the leader did return in future. So, it is interesting that he does know about Theo. And I do wonder whether Theo was going back to get food, or was he going back to get food and possibly maybe get some other item when he went back? Was he thinking, well, I found the hilt there. Maybe there's something else cool, some other cool, weapon there that I can pick up since I found the hilt, you know. I have to say, the scene when we have the orc coming in, a great little horror scene when he's searching out that last bag of rice, when Theo's searching out that last bag of rice, and the two of them battle, and then Theo taps into his blood to create the full blade. Is absolutely amazing. I love that scene. I thought that was really good. And the sword growing out from the hilt. Yeah, it was really, really good. But ultimately as well, then the orcs now know where this artifact, this hilt is. Yeah. And they say to Adar that this, you know, the boy from the village in the watchtower has this hilt, and this is what they need for some other purpose here. Yeah. So I really kind of, I like that danger. It added, in fact, to the danger of Theo and Rowan going back to the village just to get the supplies. You know, I think Theo took it ultimately as a weapon to defend himself. Yeah. And again, you know, we were wondering, is he getting taken over by the power of this hilt, you know, in a similar way as the rings? But at least he doesn't want to, or he doesn't conform to the orcs. You know, he fights them off. I love the cat and mouse through the village as he looks to escape. Yeah. But then, you know, that's clouded again with the conversation with Waldreg at the end. So, well, especially because he shows this was a great development, I thought, in the story. Yeah, absolutely. But especially because Waldreg shows him the scars that he has on his arm from doing exactly what Theo is doing, and you would suspect that Waldreg was doing it as playing with it almost, because he probably hasn't been attacked by orcs and probably hasn't had to use it to defend himself. So it's almost self-harm, is what he's done to himself. And he's showing these scars that he's had, to Theo, to kind of compare the two of them and saying, look, we're both alike. We should be following, Morgoth. We should be following Adar, I guess, since Morgoth is no longer around. Definitely. Yeah. But we do have Arondir coming in and helping Theo and saving him. And we get a great moment of him fighting back against the orcs. That awesome moment of him grabbing an arrow out of the sky and firing it back at the orcs in slow motion. That's again, we've mentioned before, some of the cool moments from Legolas in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This felt very similar to a Legolas moment, grabbing an arrow that's being fired at you out of the sky and firing it back. Very cool. I really, really enjoyed this whole sequence. Thought it was the escape of Theo from the village, him bumping into Arondir, who then protects him, and then his mom, who's come to find where he is after Rowan, because Rowan has effectively run away. You know, it's starting to get dark. The sun is going down, and he's already got a wheelbarrow full of food, so he kind of races off. I want to criticize Rowan, but I think I'd do the same thing. I think I would do the same thing as well. But the music in this scene then on this chase through the dark forest by the orcs, it's just superb. And what I love about it more is when they get out into the open and sort of sunrise is happening and the clouds break, then the orcs can't move from the forest into the sunlight. But it's even just how this whole epic piece of music, to my mind, just merges, you know, of Arondir, Theo, and Bronwyn escaping the orcs, just merges into Disa's singing, into, and becomes a continuation and moves into Disa's singing, in
in Khazad-dûm.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Which I guess we can take us on to our tale number 2.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Which is Mithril in Khazad-dûm. But just to continue that, it really gave me goosebumps seeing Disa singing to the rocks. I thought it was really amazing. And you see Elrond looking on, really intrigued, and she tells him it was a plea to the rocks to release those miners from the mining shaft that had been caught in a cave-in. And it's just, I just found it really, really cool.
It was so good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Again, you know, we are getting such a great insight into the dwarves here. You know, there's loads in The Hobbit, and I feel like I know dwarves very well in this universe because there's so many dwarves in The Hobbit, all different types of characters that are explored really well in the Peter Jackson movies. But they were all broken dwarves. They were all dwarves without a home trying to get back to their home. Here we have dwarves in their home dealing with major issues. They're miners, and some miners got trapped in a cave-in.
Yes.
That would be quite a significant occurrence for this group of people that work in conjunction with the mountain, as they've said before. So this idea of having them sing to allow them to be freed and allow them to come back with breath in their bodies. And we learn later that all of them were saved. All of them come back with breath in their bodies, as they say. But it is beautiful. And I believe I believe it's the actress herself who was doing that song as well. I think it's absolutely beautiful, really gorgeous touch. But this is all surrounding the investigation, I guess, of Elrond into what this item is in Khazad-dûm.
Yeah.
Where he's talking to Durin about what is this thing that they're mining in this deepest of the old mines.
Well, that's it. It's all kind of kicked off, actually, with Celebrimbor saying that Durin is avoiding him, or at least hiding something, and so Elrond it goes off to investigate. Really, and we see the forge being built as well in Lindon as well. You know, it's getting pretty sizable at this stage, and so that really is what prompts Elrond to go. He's asking Princess Disa, you know, what's happening and so on. And I love how, you know, she tells a lie by telling the truth to some extent. You know, it's like a white lie. But when she's there on the bridge with Durin, and you have the magical lip reading abilities of Elrond, which effectively leads him to the old mine there, which is beneath the Mirrormere.
Interesting. Yeah. I have to say, Disa is fast becoming one of my favorite characters. I love her protectiveness of her family, but she's got a real good sense of humor about her as well. She is playing with Elrond. She knows he's a difficult person to deal with. He'll be able to see through lies. So as you say, she kind of works the lies so that they feel like truth. So I thought that was fantastic, getting to see this character work around Elrond. But he's still suspicious, which is why he's able to watch on and learn what they're doing by reading their lips. But again, we see the friendship of these two characters, of Durin and Elrond. Durin entrusts the information to Elrond that they have found this brand new ore under the mountains of Khazad-dûm, which is something that they've never seen before. So this would bring great riches, he says, to the dwarven race. This will be something that will echo through the generations of dwarves if they have this material, and they're the only people in Middle Earth that have it. That means they can sell it for whatever they want.
It will lead to prosperity and so on. And so, you know, Durin is thinking that the elves are here to steal, like to find out about it and steal this mithril.
Well, certainly King Durin is. Yeah. And he's imposing that on his son, going, you know, the elves are here for this reason.
I really liked as well that, you know, in Dwarvish, it's actually known as grey glitter. Whereas mithril is the elvish, form of the description of this new ore.
Yes.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Durin has an attempt at saying mithril, but doesn't quite get it right. But so I like that little element to it as well, to be honest.
I also kind of like the trust that it shows between Durin and Elrond, again, you know, showing how strong their friendship is, that he gives them some of the mithril. His father suspects that the elves want this mithril. But when Durin and Elrond have the discussion eventually, he hands over some of the mithril to Elrond as a gift to him to show the trust between the two of them, but not before we have the great moment of him having to swear to the mountain, which again, another ritual of the dwarves, you know. If he says this, if he swears to the mountain, then I know I can trust him effectively. So
yeah. Exactly. You know, there is an oath here given by Elrond not to let this secret out effectively. And I think, interestingly, speaking of secrets, in the same way we had Celebrimbor, you know, being suspicious of Durin's motives, you then have Prince Durin with his father, King Durin the Third, effectively agreeing that Durin should go to Lindon with Elrond. To find out what is at work with the elves. Like, again, there is an undercurrent of suspicion here about the true motives of the elves and this pact that's been presented to him as king. But as well as that, I really liked Durin because of that cave-in, because the king was telling him to be cautious, to go slowly, not to overextend, and his son, Prince Durin, really just trying to speed it on. He goes to ask for forgiveness from his dad after saying how difficult it was going to be to Elrond, and Elrond giving him, you know, basically telling him, you know, be precious with the time that you've got. And so that was a really nice moment. Certainly when I think King Durin just says, forever I am with you, my son. There's nothing to forgive.
Absolutely,
you know, and the traditions that when a new king is anointed in dwarven society, that it is known that the good, the bad, the wisdom is passed on through and from the ancestors to the new king. So I thought that was really good.
Absolutely. And I wonder if there's a little nod to King Durin knowing that his son is so like him, that he already has passed on all of his knowledge because his son is so similar to him in many ways. I wonder if that was what the comment was. You know, he says to him, I'm with you always, especially in moments of anger, almost like I'm just like you kind of thing. So we'll always be together, no matter whether you hear me raise my voice, we'll always be together. And I think that's a good resolution to that conversation that was had with Elrond. You know, you enjoy all the time you have with them because one day they'll be gone. But if you know them well, then you can keep that with you for the rest of your life. So really like that. These scenes are great. I really love the how they're building this relationship out, particularly through the eyes of Elrond and Durin, who in some ways are pushing back against each of their kind to keep their friendship together.
Exactly. It's really good.
Like, the only relationship that we've seen like this before is Legolas and Gimli, who were constantly butting heads until they became great friends in the Fellowship, and then went on to become great friends for the rest of their lives. So seeing this kind of old friendship here in Rings of Power, I think works really well.
It really does, I think. And it's at a different level, I think, with Legolas and Gimli because of the nature of what's happening. This feels very much about, you know, mistrust, suspicion around motives between two very proud and important races of dwarves and elves, and this is the upper echelons of their society. You know, this is almost a bit like espionage, but within this, there is actually two friends trying to, as you say, navigate through it and almost protect their friendship as much as their own society.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm really enjoying how the dwarves are being portrayed here. I think it feels really different for me.
Absolutely.
And so I'm really enjoying it. But let us move with that on to tale number 3.
Absolutely.
Galadriel gets support from the Númenorians.
Finally, she's been working hard at this, hasn't she?
Well, she has, but probably with the wrong tact.
Yes, shouting in their faces and telling them she just wants a ship to get back and fight her fight in the past. But this has all been building for the last few episodes, really, and seeing, you know, the distrust that's there in the Númenóreans. You know, we heard before that they cut off the elves. The elves aren't allowed to go to Númenor. They separated their friendship, separated their relationship. And there's massive distrust between these peoples. That's why the king is no longer in power. And that's why we have the Queen Regent here, because he was someone that was going back to the old ways. He was someone that did trust the elves. And yeah, there's some strife going on within the Númenóreans, thinking, hang on a second, Galadriel has just walked in here and she has the ear of the queen, or the ear of the Queen Regent. She's the one telling her what to do, effectively. But what they don't know is that she's had this dream of the wave coming in and destroying Númenor. Nobody there to save them. The whole city of Númenor taken out. So she has this thing going on in her mind, potentially a vision of what could happen in the future. You know, if they stay where they are, maybe they will all be wiped out and wiped off the face of the earth.
Well, that's it, and it's on the basis of that vision where Galadriel's summoned to the royal chamber, where effectively, again, Galadriel puts up the fight to say that, you know, the Númenóreans must come and fight with her against the forces of evil. I always like that snap cut where effectively someone has just offended another person of great authority and really shouldn't have done that. And then there's the cut to effectively Galadriel being put into prison.
Yes, none such as you will quell my fire. And then the door slams on the prison door. Yes,
it was just really, really good. But I mean, you know, behind this is that, you know, we got it from an earlier episode about the portents, you know, the conversation about the importance of these different signs and portents around destiny and fate, and you know, whether they are real and should be looked at and be used for decisions, and the opposite, that they shouldn't be heeded to. And here, Queen Miriel is effectively making decisions based on these portents of this great wave, of which Galadriel is one of them. And so not only does she lock her up because of her rudeness to you know, her, but it is also because she will be being put on a boat and sent away from Númenor in this moment. So I really like that kind of idea. You know, just this balance, this battle of, you know, myth, legend, superstition, portents, you know, how the skies look or whatever, to, you know, how something may play out as predictors for future events. So this was really good. And I liked how it then sort of put her in the prison locked up with Halbrand, where we then get a bit more, you know, discussion where he's advising her, you know, to conduct herself with, you know, a bit more coolly, in the throne room, you know, to find their weakness, but not so that she can exploit it, but so that they, as Númenóreans, can master it. And by doing that, you master them. I thought that was a really interesting kind of piece of advice from Halbrand. You know, what is their weakness? But not to exploit it in the way of furthering that weakness, but to exploit it in a way so that, in effect, your opposition here can master that weakness, and then they become sort of enthralled by you, so that you're almost brought into the circle of the Númenóreans by helping them with this, which I thought was, I just thought was a really interesting piece of advice from Halbrand. But I don't know quite whether she took it all on board, because part of the reason that really irked Queen Miriel was that Galadriel actually asks for an audience with her father.
The real
king,
power here.
Yeah,
yes,
the real power here. And when the Chancellor Pharazon comes to collect her to, get her shipped off the island, she takes out all the guards and runs off up into the tower where the king is.
Pretty good move to take out all the guards, push them into the cell, close the door behind them, and then leave Pharazon standing with Halbrand telling him, you might as well stick out of this one, basically.
Exactly. And this is where the Queen tells that Galadriel is the first portent of this great wave. The prophecy, this fear of the prophecy as she, pulls out a palantir, which was really cool.
Yes, it was. The palantir, these, the things that possibly can see the future, can see so much, I suppose is the way they're described. They can see so much that they could potentially tell you of a future. We know Galadriel is someone herself who has her mirror that can potentially tell you of futures, which we see in the Lord of the Rings movies, where she is a believer in predictors of the future in these portents. So it was interesting to see her look into the palantir and see this image of the wave coming in to destroy Númenor. So that kind of gets her on side again, I guess, with Míriel. They've now seen the same vision. She knows now what Míriel is scared of. To Halbrand's comment, I suppose, she knows now that what the leader of Númenor is scared of. She's scared of this massive wave coming in and destroying their entire civilization. So she kind of plays on that. To get her back on side, right?
Yeah, she does. I really like the frank conversation between these two. What was it that pulled you away from the elves? Galadriel says the virtue which the Valor effectively gave them and entrusted this island, this star island, was your loyalty to the elves and what your father believed in. Why has this come back and why is it being reneged on almost? And it is this portent. It is the fear of this prophecy that if we let elves on this island, that's one of the first portents to kick off whatever sequence to this great wave. And that it is on becoming king and queen that this palantir, it becomes knowledge to you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's held in one of the royal towers.
Oh, interesting stuff. Yeah. I wonder what's going to happen there. We still don't know what happens to Númenor. We know it doesn't exist in the next age, I guess. So I guess something bad's going to happen to the Númenorians and Númenor. But,
I think so. Yeah. The interesting thing as well with the Númenorians is that with the Queen essentially going with Galadriel now, or making that decision in the tower to go with her, I wonder if that becomes the reason for all the Númenorian structures then on Middle-earth that we see in like the Fellowship of the Rings and so on. Because it seems like they haven't actually been there. They've just been developing their guilds and their skills here on the Star Island of Númenor.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. But we also see Isildur's sister, Arianne, doing some architectural drawings of all of the buildings, wasn't she? Isn't she an architect now?
Yes.
So she's drawing all the buildings. So potentially her book goes with them as architectural drawings of these amazing buildings in Númenor that get passed on and help with the creation of Gondor, potentially. That's the one that surrounds the white tree, which is mentioned quite significantly in this episode, with the petals of the white tree as they fall are indicators of the tears of the Valor who are looking on at all times on the Númenorians. I love that speech. I think it's absolutely magnificent.
It really is.
It really just gets that sense of the Tolkien I like, I guess. That really descriptive language that Tolkien had and that Peter Jackson used in his trilogy. Absolutely beautiful scene as the Queen Regent convinces the rest of the Númenorians that they should join up with this battle for the Southlands and go with Galadriel. I think it's an absolutely beautiful moment. And again, beautifully visualized on screen. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's it for our tales. Are there any notes from Middle-earth?
I guess just because we mentioned Éireann, the sister of Isildur, she's now having a little relationship there with Kemen, the son of Pharazon.
Yeah.
So that's lots of names there, rather than who they are. But yes, seems to be a little bit of a relationship building there with Kemen. I also like the little Cobra Kai touch there, where she's being told that if she's washing the floors, it will help with her dexterity, which felt really like Cobra Kai.
Yes, wash on, wash off.
Wash off.
Wax on, wax off.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the other thing here we see with Isildur is he hears the West calling his name
once again.
And because of that, is thrown off the sea guard of the Númenorians, along with his two mates, because rigging has been allowed to get loose on one of the training exercises that they're doing. But right then at the end, looks to join this expeditionary force to Middle-earth to aid the brethren from the Southlands.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that was kind of a new element to this voice calling Isildur, actually, was that, he hears the West calling his name. I think it makes reference to, hearing his name coming from the West.
Yeah.
Or that's how I interpreted it, which it's like the Valor is, having, again, maybe prophesizing in some way.
Maybe. Yeah, we'd heard a couple of episodes ago that his brother has already gone off to the west of Númenor to find the lands of their ancestors, effectively. So that's what he seems to be going past on the ship, and that's calling to him, calling out his name. So that's a really interesting one. Also got to quickly call out, Pharazon, who's trying to calm down the uproar that's going on amongst the Númenorians, calms them down by saying, look, it's just one elf. She can't change anything. We will still all be a united people, and rewards them all with drinks for everybody. So,
exactly.
He knows his guildsmen. He knows his tradesmen. Calm them down a bit, get them out of this idea that the whole world's going to fall apart because just one elf has arrived in our land, and then give them beer, and that'll keep them on side.
Yeah, definitely.
Which was actually the solution from Halbrand a couple of episodes as well ago with the guildsmen, wasn't it? It was when they came in to try and challenge him, he was like, "Drinks on me."
Yes.
And unfortunately, it ended off him going to prison because he couldn't stop fighting with them.
Yeah, exactly. But with that, Derek, then, did you enjoy episode 4 of The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, The Great Wave?
I loved this episode. I thought the opening particularly was absolutely fantastic because it's such a stunning image of these waves crashing in over this beautiful city. The city of Númenor is absolutely so well realized in this series, but it's starting out there and then getting a bit about Adar, at least, and seeing a bit about the plan, about what's happening, really cementing the idea that this series is all about how the Southlands becomes Mordor, which is what we expect to happen, or where the story seems to be going, within this series. But these are all great elements that are being added, but I also loved the relationship between Elrond and Durin at the heart of this kind of, as you say, this battle between the elves and the dwarves, this friendship that's continually being tested.
Yes.
A really, really good way of telling that story. And then everything else that's going on to kind of whip up the unification, I guess, of a group that's going to hopefully battle against what's going on in the Southlands, against the taking over of the Southlands by these beasts. I think the story is playing out exactly at the pace I wanted to play out with a TV show of Lord of the Rings. It's not about stabbing every episode. It's not about who's going to get killed and who's going to get overthrown. This is about the forging of a group of unlikely allies versus the great evil that's starting to take over the Southlands. And I think that's exactly how it's been done for the show, and it's working really well for me. Loving episode 4, looking forward to episode 5. How about yourself, John? Did you enjoy Rings of Power episode 4?
Yeah, I really did. I'd give this 4.5 Palantir portents out of 5.
Ooh, drinks all round.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you said, really enjoy how this story is progressing. And for me as well, you know, a number of standout moments, just really beautiful in their imagery, their importance and so on, is Queen Miriel with the dream. And as you say, with the petals falling from the tree.
Fabulous.
Absolutely loved the escape from the village of Theo, and then being joined by Arondir and Bronwyn, and just that whole musical piece. I mean, firstly, just the shots were amazing. The music just underscoring the whole scenes. It was tense and moved into just being epic as the sun bursts out from the clouds, but then just the edit into Disa, pleading to the rocks of the mountain of Khazad-dûm to release the miners. Just really fantastic piece of television to me. I'm really loving Durin and Elrond's relationship, as you've mentioned, just this, you know, friendship caught between two different races in a sense, and their collective mistrust, at least at the higher levels of those societies with the other. So that's really good. And yeah, I mean, Galadriel, she just doesn't give up really. So, fair dues to, tenacity.
Well, yeah.
Really on this front. So yeah, 4.5 Palantir portents out of 5 for me.
Excellent stuff. Let's get some thoughts from our wonderful fellow ringers. Thanks so much to those of you who sent us in feedback. You can continue to send us in feedback to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries, where you can share your thoughts on the spoiler posts for each episode of the shows that we're covering.
Yes, first up for episode 4, we have a voicemail from Dr. Bob Phillips.
Really enjoying these voicemails from Dr. Bob.
Yeah,
He doesn't normally send them in to us, so keep sending them in, Dr. Bob. I think he's just worried for us because we don't have our third normal voice in Chris on these podcasts, so he's trying to add an extra voice to the podcast. So keep them coming, Dr. Bob.
Well, episode 4 of the Rings of Power was full of extremely good advice. For example, why you should always follow the instructions of your mother unless you're going to get, like, blattered by orcs in an ancient village. And did anybody else think Rosie the Riveter, but actually it's Rosie the Rabbit Hunter, that's saving the entire nation of humans from orc invasion? At the end of that little thread all about the tower that was protecting everybody, it was wonderful to see Elfus Ex Machina swing into action as love was reunited after, well, frankly, escape from the Davros of the orcs. Anyway, the most exciting thing in this whole episode was the use of lip reading. Now, lip reading is seriously underrepresented in nearly the whole of TV, but particularly in the fantasy genre. I mean, of course, people will have been lip reading, particularly in the days when, you know, people got old enough to have that sort of ancient loss of hearing that goes with getting very old. And you just do. You develop little bits of lip reading as you go along, or so my friends have told me. Anyway, the other great thing about this episode was the use of opera as a mining tool. Finally, it made sense. Everything fit together when such an astounding voice came from such an astounding dwarf. Yep, enjoyed this episode a lot, and I hope you did too. Thank you for the podcasts. I really hope you're having a wonderful holiday and looking forward to these mega episodes when you get back.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. Yes, we had a great time on our holidays.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bob. Yeah, holidays was superb. And crowned off on our return with Elfus Ex Machina as well. Yeah, that was superb.
Good on you.
And totally with you around Deez's absolutely beautiful operatic plea to the mountains. Really good. I just wanted to confirm whether you're suggesting that Elrond is losing his hearing, maybe?
Maybe.
Or
he is a couple of thousand years old.
That's it. He could be.
Yeah.
It could be that he's losing his hearing.
But I think
well.
I think the point Dr. Bob is making is that we all develop the ability to read lips, and when
definitely.
you have the amazing sight that elves have, they are also able to read lips from very far distances.
I'm just expecting him to have a hearing trumpet he possibly should have had that in the Fellowship of the Rings, but that would have made him look possibly less sort of strident.
Yeah. You'd guess at this stage that Celebrimbor might have a hearing trumpet somewhere hidden, and he's just reading people's lips. Excellent stuff, Dr. Bob. As I said, please keep sending us in your voicemails. Really loving having your voice adding to the podcast as well.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Let's pop on over to Facebook for some Facebook feedback. First up, Anwen from New Zealand had some thoughts again about Elphys Ex Machinus. She says, I could honestly watch Arondir catch and release that arrow 100 times. It's like they took the agility of Legolas, the gritty hotness of Aragorn, the sadness of Grey Worm, and the arms of Hawkeye and blended them into the best elf ever. That is fantastic. I love that. Yeah, absolutely loving Arondir in this show. He's had some really exciting moments already in this season.
Yeah, he's superb. Really enjoying this character so much. And yeah, the catch and release of the arrow, just, fantastic. Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
I guess. Or elf kiss.
There you
go.
Elf
maybe.
Kiss. That's what Bronwyn's hoping for anyway.
Thanks, Elman. Also, Victor Von Doom says, salutations, my lords. Another excellent episode. What does Isildur feel is west of Númenor? Mm-hmm. He and Theo seem to have self-destructive traits that harm their friends and loved ones. Oh, that's a nice little catch, actually. Yeah, just the parallels between these two. Mm. Victor continues, I feel Theo is of course doomed. There are some powerful women in this story as well. Galadriel and the Queen Regent make a remarkable and powerful pair. Bronwyn is also a natural leader, and Disa is also in their company. I was happy to see more of the dwarves. Disa is amazing and continues to bring Durin and Elrond closer together. The oath between Elrond and Durin was also very heartfelt. By the way, what is strong gravy? Kemen seems to have a thing for Aryan. Mm-hmm. He strikes me as a rebellious youth. Can he be trusted with anything?
Interesting.
I always knew Arondir would escape his orc captors, but not at the behest of Adar. Is Adar the first corrupted elf? What lies was he referring to? I am also very interested in how all these events seem like portents drawing all the storylines and protagonists together. One final question from Victor. Was it natural mutation or Sauron's spells that enabled the orcs to dwell in sunlight? Finally, will Arondir and Bronwyn stop messing about and just get on with it? Adith Thorasithil, Victor Von Doom. Great stuff, Victor.
Absolutely. Yeah, some really good observations there. Some really interesting questions as well. Some, hopefully will be answered as the show go on. Of course, we'll get those answers as we go. But, there's some really intriguing ones. What's strong gravy? There's the first question from Victor. This is, where Disa says, if you say someone, a dwarf is dishonest in their own home, that's a recipe for strong gravy. It's, I think they use it in Scotland. They use it over in Ireland a bit as well. It's kind of saying that it's a recipe to annoy someone, to piss someone off, basically. Yeah. If you call them dishonest in their home, that's a recipe for a fight. Yeah. You're cruising for a bruising. Be another term for it. There you go.
Absolutely. It's strong gravy packs a punch. Yeah. It's a recipe for strong punch.
Yeah,
certainly as she's just being called dishonest in her own home. Mm-hmm. But I think she takes it in a light-hearted way. She says it's kind of giving him the social cues that, hang on, you don't do that.
Exactly.
You could get punched in the head here by me, nonetheless.
Exactly. As for Kemen, I guess he's the son of someone really powerful in the city and is going and chatting up Aaron. So Is he a rebellious youth, or is he just different to his father? I wonder if that's what it is. His father seems to have a very powerful position, so I wonder if he just works differently to his dad.
Yeah, possibly. He's kind of almost an apprentice to his father in a sense, or is one of his eyes and ears around the city.
He does seem quite privileged.
Yeah, definitely.
Seems to have that privilege at the background. Yeah.
And I think also in respect to Adar, whether he's the first corrupted elf, it's kind of what I'm thinking of here, possibly, or at least an elf, and that then creates the orcs, from that, has some ability to do that. In terms of then,
especially because they keep calling him father. Yeah.
Or was it a natural mutation or Sauron's spells that enabled the orcs to dwell in sunlight? So I'm wondering whether you're referring to the Uruk-hai from the Two Towers, which was a mutation done by Saruman, in order to build bigger, better orcs effectively. Yeah. So it's that moment down where it's kind of like they're gestating in the mud and in the kind of sacks, in the mud, where Saruman has effectively mutated orcs with whatever else in order to create the Uruk-hai.
Yeah, but I do think there's possibly a natural mutation as well, because there are orcs as well that we do see in Lord of the Rings who can travel outside in the sunlight, and we see them in The Hobbit as well, who travel in the sunlight. So it's not
That's
just
true.
Uruk-hai. So it's probably a mix of both effectively. So as they've gotten on, and potentially we may find out how they were able to dwell in the sunlight here. It could be something that Adar did this early on with the orcs. Some of his orcs may be able to walk in the sunlight. Possibly. But
I think it's very much hit home here in Rings of Power that they can't travel in the day unless they're fully covered. Because even in the Lord of the Rings, it's about the clouds, the darkness coming from Mordor and spreading out to aid their passage to fight Gondor. So I think it's that kind of side of things. And yet Pippin and Merry, there are orcs with Uruk-hai traveling during the day. So I'm not entirely sure actually.
Yeah, maybe Peter Jackson, Philip Boyens, and Fran Walsh just ignored that bit.
Possibly, and
it's too difficult for doing night shoots all the time.
Exactly, it could just be that. And then, yes, I'd love to know what the lies that Adar is referring to as well. Hopefully, we do get something a bit more on that. I'm sure we will.
Sure, you will.
Great stuff as always, Victor.
Absolutely,
and. Yeah, good thoughts and questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Victor. Joe Herbers says, we look forward to watching the show, but it's yet to really hit for me. It's slow at times and often in slow motion, but seems to skip past details other times. Hopefully we're done with Galadriel being foolishly obnoxious to everyone. That was getting kind of annoying. Surprising how easy she captured several armed and armoured guards ready for her. The Smiths ranting in the square of Númenor didn't make much sense. Who would think elves would overrun the island in order to take their jobs? Elves aren't that numerous, and why would they want common human jobs, working for humans? Seems like the writers wanted to compare the people's attitudes to modern ones about migrant workers and such, but as an analogy it makes no sense with immortal elves. Odd that they completely skipped over them rescuing the trapped dwarves in the mine. That would have been more interesting than some of the stuff with Isildur. I wouldn't think it would be a budget issue, but maybe that was it. Thanks for your thoughts, Joe. I suppose the big thing about Galadriel, we've heard that she's a warrior. She kind of goes off the handle quite a lot. You know, she was a leader and a warrior. So, the idea of her taking on a few standard armed guards in Númenor who don't seem to get very many visitors, very often. I don't think they're the greatest trained of armed guards. She slipped them a couple of times, but the idea that she could take on a few of them at the same time doesn't really surprise me, given what we've seen of her from the beginning of the series here, and how many hundreds of years she's been fighting.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get you around the guild, the guy from the Smiths Guild, talking about the jobs, and I mean, ultimately, Pharazon says it's only one elf. Yeah. She isn't going to sway the queen, and we will be united Númenorians. So it felt like there were maybe just different perspectives at play here, and it was Pharazon that had to really say, hang on, guys, this is just one elf. what power over the rest of Númenor do you think she has? Certainly coming over and stealing our jobs effectively type thing. So I think Pharazon kind of came in and snuffed that sort of disquiet, I guess, or that reason for disquiet out. That's how I kind of took it, I guess.
Yeah, and I suppose, I'm not someone that agrees with that idea anyway, in that whipping up of people when immigrants come in, and the idea that they're going to take all of our jobs, that idea. So while, yes, I'm sure they're trying to make a connection with our modern ideas, I can understand that there would be people that would try to use that to whip people up around them, and that's why it's so easily quelled by Pharazon. That seems to be why it's so easy for him to talk everybody off the ledge, is because he's got to go, look, lads, hang on a second. They're not going to be coming in here taking your jobs. But I will say one thing that might aid it is the Númenorians are not like humans. As you can see from the buildings that they've created, the weapons they've created, they are very, very skilled, and they've worked very hard to be as skilled as the elves are on Middle-earth. So while they're not up to the elves' standard, and the elves aren't going to come to them and take their jobs, they are very similar in their skills and their abilities to be able to create some of the most amazing buildings and the most amazing weapons and armor. So if you were looking for a job and you had been thrown out by your elven race, maybe you do want to come over to Númenor to work with them, because they are very skilled people to work with. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah,
maybe. And it might just be more about protecting the trade. I mean, if they're not even trading with the elves anymore. But still, I definitely get your point on that, Joe, for sure. I think it's possibly more, it's got to start somewhere, and it always does. Yeah. And this is someone spouting off, but is, easily kind of quelled by Pharazon. I mean, even just that, he says, talk that the queen is an elf lover just because of one elf is crazy. So it's more, again, of, a purposeful dislike, hatred, call it what you will, of elves that I think the guild member is trying to sort of rile and whip up out of the crowd.
Absolutely. But and then Galadriel does convince the queen to send an army with
exactly.
to Southlands.
So I guess it maybe could have been handled a little bit better. And I think, Joe, to your point as well around Isildur, I would like to see that getting a bit juicier, to be honest. I'm kind of intrigued by it, because I guess I'm intrigued by whispering words over the sky, speaking his name.
He's also a major player, though.
He is.
So you do need to have him being brought into the story, because he will become a major player. But at the moment, he's he doesn't have much impetus to the character.
No, and he's not a major player at the moment.
And they've kind of told the same thing about him twice now. That he loses his concentration, gets kicked out of the Sea Guard. He lost his concentration before, so you get a bit of that, and you're also getting that he wants to go west to discover the history of his family. But I do think those kind of points need to be repeated, because the character of Isildur will become really important in the future, so you got to kind of keep him in there and keep the idea of why you were interested in this character in there. But I hope he becomes more important in the future. But it is a shame we didn't see the trapped dwarves, or the rescuing of the trapped dwarves in the mine. I don't think that was sacrificed because of the Isildur scenes, and I actually really love the way they dealt with Disa singing about them. I thought that was a much more beautiful way to deal with it, rather than having an action scene of people being trapped under rubble in the mine.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm kind of with you. I do want to see a bit more meat on the old bone of Isildur and his story, So hopefully, because his family has to rise to power at least, and I think there's a lot there for this character, depending on how far this goes across the the seasons that are planned here. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Great stuff. Thanks, Joe, for the feedback.
Absolutely. And thanks everybody for sending in your feedback to us for Lord of the Rings episode 4. Again, if you want to send us in any thoughts on the show, email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with any thoughts that you have, or join us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries.
Yes, you can support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, or over on Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TVPI. You can also support us by subscribing to the podcast, rating us, leaving a review, and of course sharing the podcast with friends, family, elves, dwarves, and orcs even, if you so wish to go that route.
They might like it.
They may.
They can't go out during the daytime. Maybe they have lots of time to
Loads of time to listen to podcasts, exactly. Because, of course, even with orcs, sharing the podcast would be sharing the love.
Absolutely.
And maybe an orc needs a little bit of a hug and a bit of love,
yes.
you know.
I know Adar does seem to give them hugs, but just before he plunges a dagger into their into their heart. So maybe not. No, that was him taking care of them and putting them out of the mystery. I get that.
Yes,
but,
exactly.
But thanks so much for joining us for our podcast about Rings of Power, episode 4. We are also we're catching back up after our holidays. We're covering Marvel's She-Hulk. We just covered the last 2 episodes of Marvel's She-Hulk, episode 5 and episode 6. A couple more episodes to go in that season. We're also covering The Sandman. Got 2 more episodes to go on The Sandman on Netflix. Got episode 10 and episode 11 to cover in the next week or 2. So please continue to join us. You'll get all of those on our main feed on tvpodcastindustries.com, or just search TV Podcast Industries on any good or evil podcast catcher to get access to everything that we're covering. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next time.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow ringers, for joining us as always. Fantastic chatting about Middle-earth and the Rings of Power with you. In the meantime, keep watching, keep listening, and keep sailing west.
Absolutely. Drinks all round.
Bye.
Bye.